And April is all about love. And so this month we've been speaking about love from lots of different ways. Mostly I've spoken from a biblical aspect of love, going through the ideas of love thyself, love thy neighbor, the greatest love of all. Today I'd like to look at it from what our founder has to say about love. And so when you came in, there was a magnet on your chair. That's for you to take home. We have extra ones. If you'd like to give one out to somebody else, you're welcome to do that. I just want to caution you, don't put it next to your credit cards and your wallet, because you might not be able to use them when you get home. But this is for you. And this is some of the things that our founder, Ernest Holmes, says about love. You guys remember that cartoon back in the 70s and 80s, the little two cute little characters, and it said, love is ... and all those things. So I was inspired by that to create a magnet with some of the things that our founder says love is. He uses the phrase love is, well, literally thousands of times, because I count it. So I went into I have 15 of his books on Kindle. And so in Kindle, you can do a search. And so I thought, how many times? Because it was just like one after the other, as I'm researching for this talk. So in 15 books, he mentions love is 3,015 times. I love Kindle. Love to be able to do that search feature on there. 3,015 times he has words that describe what love is. He speaks about love and law. Law being the principle, being the way things work, being the part of spirit that is absolute and never falters, the part of spirit that is not judgmental, but just does what it does. And then he talks about the love. He is often quoted as saying in his later years that he wished he had spent more of his earlier work focusing on love instead of law, because he's come to realize how important the love actually is. Recently, I've been reading two of his later books. Well, they're actually books that were not written by him, but they're books that are written about what he has said. One was written by Willis Kinnear, who was one of his companions in his later years, and it is the talks that he gave in 1959, which was the year before he passed away. And it's some of his last talks, and it is so filled with love. That one particular book, 120-some pages, has over 500 references to love is, because that's what he was focusing on in his later years. Love is. The other book that I had just recently discovered is actually written by a previous editor of the Science of Mind magazine. If you're not familiar with the Science of Mind magazine, it is the longest continuously published magazine in the United States, and it's the magazine that our founder started in 1929. And it's a monthly publication with these principles that we have, that we teach here. Anyway, so the editor of the Science of Mind took the radio shows that Ernest Holmes did in the 1950s and has written this book called The Power of This Thing Called Life. Ernest Holmes' radio show was called This Thing Called Life. And so he has put together the talks and synthesized that and created this wonderful book. And it's really quite a remarkable book. I'm really thrilled with it. I'm trying to see what I can do with it. But many of the quotes that I'm going to use today come from either those two books, either Ideas of Power, which are the last year's talks of Ernest Holmes, or Power of This Thing Called Life from his radio shows. So what does Ernest say love is? He has a book that he wrote in 1942 called The New Thought Dictionary. And in there, this is how he defines love. Love is the outpouring of spirit. Love is the givingness of life. In its lesser sense, love is the affection one has for another. The principle of love is not to be confused with sentimentality, although all forms of love are aspects of it. Love is the greatest transforming power, which brings everything into harmony. Love is the unifying principle, the creative element, the motivating power of all that is fine and noble in life. And in our spiritual mind treatment, which is our form of affirmative prayer, love is the healing force back of all prayer. Love is the healing force in the universe. He's often quoted as saying love is all there is. Sometimes he'll say other things like God is all there is, joy is all there is, peace is all there is. These qualities that are synonymous with spirit. So if love is all there is, Why do we experience so many things that aren't love? Why do we experience so many things that look like they are contrary to love? If love is all there is, why do we have so much violence in this world? In his book, The Power of this thing called life, he writes, all violence stems from a sense of disconnect. All violence stems from a sense of disconnect. The United States has what I would consider an epidemic of mass shootings. Now, a mass shooting is defined as 3 or more people who are shot or killed at one time in one particular incident. Today is the 113th day of the year. We've had 174 mass shootings. In 2021, there were 690 mass shootings. In 2022, there were 647 mass shootings. I didn't add up the number of people injured or killed. If love is all there is, why are we having so many mass shootings? Why is there so much out there? It goes back to all violence stems from disconnection. Author Glennon Doyle tells a story of going to her son's 5th grade teacher. He was doing division, and she couldn't understand how he was doing it. So she went to the teacher to say, can you explain this to me so I can help my son, because I don't understand this new math. So the teacher is working with her. It's a Friday afternoon, and the teacher is working with her, has said she's going to work with her after school. And so Glennon Doyle gets to school a few minutes before the class is over. And right at the end of the day, on Friday afternoon, the teacher passes out, passes out a piece of paper and has the students put their name at the top of it. And then she says, now I want you to write down the names of 4 people that you want to sit with next week in class. So the students do that. And then she says, all right, now I want you to nominate one person in this class who has been an outstanding student throughout this week. So they do that, and she collects all the papers, dismisses the class, and they go about their way. And so after Glennon Doyle has gotten her math lesson from the teacher, she asked the teacher about this. She goes, do you do that every week? And the teacher says, yes. She goes, well, that's really kind of cool to give the kids a choice of who they get to sit with. And she goes, well, that's not why I do it. She said, and so Glennon Doyle says, really? Well, why do you do it? That's what, you were presenting out there. She goes, no, what I'm doing is I'm looking for patterns. I take all these lists that all my students have written out, and I look for the patterns in there. She says, and I ask myself 4 questions. She says, who is not getting requested by anyone else? Who doesn't even know who to request? Who never gets noticed enough to be nominated? And who had 1 million friends last week and none this week? I'm looking for the students who are disconnected. I'm looking for the students who are isolated. I'm looking for the students who are being bullied. I'm looking for the students who are bullying. I'm looking for patterns. And Glennon Doyle says to her, how long have you been doing this? And the teacher responds, every week since Columbine. Every week since Columbine. Now, I don't have to explain Columbine to this audience, because we all lived through it. We all lived through all of the mass shootings that have been going on in the last 30 or 40 years, that have increased in their frequency in the last 10 or 12. Scarlett Lewis is the mother of a child who was killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012. He was one of 19 first graders. whose life was ended in less than 5 minutes when a young man who was very disconnected walked into his room with an assault rifle. 6 teachers, 19 students. Scarlett Lewis went home the day after her son's death, and she was looking in their kitchen, and her 6-year-old son, in his handwriting with his 6-year-old spelling, had written on the kitchen chalkboard, "Nurturing, healing, and love." Nurturing, healing, and love. When Scarlett Lewis had moved through some of her trauma, she was looking for a way to forgive, looking for a way to find more compassion. And when she started doing her work around it, she realized those 3 words, nurturing, healing, and love, were at the root of compassion in every single culture. Nurturing, healing, and love. The words out of a 6-year-old's hands. Since this death, she has created a foundation called Jessie Lewis Choose Love. And it has they've created a curriculum to help bring more compassion into the schools, to help bring a greater sense of connection to students through all of the different programs that they are offering. And it has gone quite a few schools have implemented it. In 1995, a young man named Tariq Kamisa, who was a college student, was delivering pizzas. And he was called to deliver some pizzas to a house, and he got there, and he got out of his car and was getting the pizzas out when a young 14-year-old boy who was participating in a gang initiation shot and killed him. He and his friends then took the pizzas and went and had a party. Tariq's father decided after this incident that he had a choice. He could live in hate and anger, or he could set himself on a path of forgiveness. And so he did that. And the first thing he did was he connected with the shooter's grandfather. The shooter had been raised in a family without a father, but he had a very active grandfather in his life. And between Tariq's father and the shooter's name was Tony's grandfather, they formed a foundation called the Tariq Kamisa Foundation, which targets high schools because of the age of the kids that were involved in it. They keep their focus on high schools. But again, it's an anti-violence program to help connect people, to help get them back out of that sense of isolation that is so prevalent in the society. Now, all 3 of these stories that I've just shared with you are about people trying to build connection, trying to keep people from feeling a sense of isolation. And if you start with those little kids, the 6-year-olds like Jessie Lewis, and we begin to develop a sense of connection in them, how profound that can be as they grow up in life, to keep establishing that sense of connection. When we have people like the teacher in Glennon Doyle's son's class, who is actively looking for those children that are isolated and disconnected. They are looking for ways to build love. All violence stems from the sense of disconnection. And the antidote to that is love. These are all examples of people moving through horrific challenges in their lives and getting to a place of compassion, a place of forgiveness, a place where they can actually give that love, to give that love out. You know, there have been so many tragic situations in our world. I remember October 1st, 2017, here in Las Vegas, where a man who was disconnected isolated. Decided to open fire on a concert. I was so grateful when I heard that some of our practitioners from here, from our center, went to the hospitals to see how they could help out, to see how they could give a little love, how they could ease the pain of some of the people that were involved in this horrific accident. If love is all there is, then why do we feel so disconnected? Why is our society feeling all of this? I think this is intensified in the last 3 years, this sense of disconnect. You know, when COVID hit, I remember doing my last service in St. George, Utah on March 15th and thinking, 2 weeks from now we'll be back, no problems. Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't even 2 years, and we weren't back. People rallied around online connection. They rallied on Zoom, Skype, Facebook Messenger, where you could talk with somebody live, FaceTiming each other. It was good for a while. How many of you feel warm and fuzzy when you get on a Zoom call now? Yeah. It's just not the same anymore. We still need that sense of connection. And then there's the things that have happened in the 2 years where we, got used to being at home and don't really want to go out, don't want to bother getting dressed and going somewhere, or we're still worried about being, exposed to some of these viruses that are out there. This prolonged period of disconnect that we had forced upon us by COVID, I think has altered our society in quite a few ways. It's difficult for us to engage people in Zoom classes, Zoom meetings, Zoom calls, things like that. People don't really want to do it anymore. They're Zoomed out. But yet there's still this sense of, it's just easier to stay home. I have to get dressed if I go out. I don't want to do that. I have to comb my hair, for goodness sakes. I don't want to do that. At least on Zoom, I didn't have to wear pants. Just saying. I think there is an opportunity for us here to look at ways that we can begin to reconnect with each other. One of the things that Ernest Holmes says about love is that without love, there is no creativity. Without love, there is no creativity. I think that we've actually become creative. But our creativity, the things that we are creating, are actually not the things we really want to be experiencing. Ernest says that, and he just throws out a number. I don't think there's any scientific basis behind this number because it's just arbitrary as far as I can tell. And of course, this was 1959. He says there is a desire to love and be happy, to give and receive, and back of all of it is the necessity to create. Consequently, it is known in psychology that life does not express the love and joy and receive it. It buries a lot of this necessary creativity. And it buries it, and it shows up as 85% of our physical trouble, 85% of all disease, 85% of our accidents, and all of our unhappiness. The creative urge has been sat upon and hasn't found fulfillment, and so it raises all kinds of trouble. It's from power of this thing called life. When we are not creating ourselves in a positive way, we are creating ourselves in a negative way. We are creating negative situations in our lives. We're constantly creating, so we're either creating something that's good for us or something that isn't quite so beneficial. And And so think about the things that are happening in your life. I don't like that phrase, when somebody's experiencing trouble and somebody else asks them, how did you create that? I'm not going there with that. But there is truth to the fact that we are either creating something positive for ourselves or we're creating something that we really don't want to be experiencing right now. And oftentimes that experience is a lot of health challenges. Right now, this last couple of weeks, I've been kind of in this place of stagnation. I'm in the process of buying a house, and so I'm waiting for that to happen. And so I'm just kind of like stuck. And so I found myself sitting around a lot. And so this morning when I got up, my sacrum is like not happy. So, I'm looking at this and thinking, oh, you just have created a situation in which your sacrum now needs your attention. Isn't that lovely? Because of the way I was behaving throughout the last week or so. Sitting around too much, not getting up, moving around enough, and things aren't happy. They said 85%, I don't know about that. The thing about love is it doesn't force anything to happen. It does it subtly. But when we're feeling disconnected, when we're feeling isolated, when we're feeling stuck, those things come about a little more forcefully. It's like kind of like the universe saying, "Hey, you need to pay a little attention here." And so, it's that those 2x4 moments that they talk about. If you haven't experienced a 2x4 moment, just wait till you do. That is the most apt description I have ever heard in my life. To be sitting in a nice contemplation and all of a sudden feeling like you got smacked upside the head. There is nothing quite like it. Ernest says that love does not overcome hate and fear through controversy, argument, or by force, but by a subtle power of transformation, transmutation, and sublimation. It is invisible in its essence, but apparent through its acts. Love is subtle. It changes things subtly. But it allows us to get to a place where we are able to find creative solutions to the problems that we're experiencing. But when we get stuck, when we feel disconnected, when we feel isolated, and we keep ourselves more isolated and more disconnected, and it just perpetuates the problem, then it's difficult sometimes to see those subtle nuances working through us. We need to begin to experience love in a way that allows us to transform it. To transform an experience we don't want to be having into an experience that is more beneficial for us. To transform experiences that are unpleasant in their nature into ones that uplift us and raise our consciousness. It is an ongoing opportunity to find more and more love in our lives. We can find it in all kinds of ways. It doesn't have to be the love between one person and another. It could be a love for something that you do. Perhaps you love to be out in nature, taking a walk. You're experiencing love that way. When I read the statement about creativity, I was a little perplexed about it. I feel that I'm an exceptionally creative person, and then I think, well, sometimes I don't experience as much love as I want to. And then I looked at my creations. And you know what? I absolutely love them. They tickle me. They really do. I look at the things that I've created, and I just actually get tickled by them. I want to surround my house with things that I love. I was talking to the loan processor the other day, and he goes, "What are you most excited about in your new house?" And I said, "I get to put all my art up. I don't have to worry about, I've been renting a house for the last year and a half. I don't have to worry about what the landlord's going to say. I get to put it up the way I want to put it up. I get to create the space that I want to create. I get to bring the love that I want to feel into the home that I'm going to be in." And so we have this opportunity all the time to bring about more of an experience of love in our lives. I have one last quote here that I'd like to share with you. And again, this comes from Ideas of Power, one of the last talks that Ernest Holmes ever gave in 1959. And he got a little feisty in the end. He would tell people exactly like it was. So he says this: God didn't make a mistake when it made you. You are an exalted being. You are the graciousness of the living God. You are the incarnation and embodiment of the living Spirit. You are the joy of God. You are the delight of God, and you are the song of God. And anyone who will sing a song will hear it come back from 1,000 other voices. Anyone who will love enough will be loved. Anyone who will be happy enough will make happiness and make others happy. They just can't help it. Beloved, you are the thing that you seek, the thing for which you long for. The great and the good and the gracious God exists in you. Act as though I am, and consciously dissolve all those thoughts and feelings and fears, and then look out. All right, let's take this into prayer. I invite our spiritual practitioners to stand and surround us. These beloveds spend at least 4 years in dedicated study and spiritual practice to build their consciousness and to be a beneficial presence to our entire community. And so we just simply turn within. And when I do that, I just simply close my eyes and take in a breath, allowing that breath to connect in my body, feeling that life force moving through me, knowing that it is only one presence, one power, one divine creative source of all. It looks like many different things. It shows up in many different ways and through many different avenues, but it is all one. That creative love intelligence is that presence of unconditional love, of perfect peace, of divine wisdom. It is balance and harmony flowing throughout the entire universe. The ebb and flow of life, moving itself in greater and greater expanding circles, encompassing all that is. And because I know that there is only this one, I know that I am one with it. And all that it is resides right at the heart of my being. I am that place of perfect peace, of unconditional love, of creative intelligence and wisdom. My life is one of balance and harmony, of ebb and flow. And because I know this is true for me, I know this is true for everyone. For we are each a perfect emanation of that one, endowed with all that Spirit is. And so knowing this truth, I speak my word. I know that each one of us is a perfect receptacle for love, a perfect place for love to generate itself from us, moving itself through us, touching everyone in our circle. I know that divine love has no judgment. It knows no sin or condemnation. It is always unfolding itself for the highest and greatest good of everyone. And I know through this power of love that we are all connected in this oneness, that there is no sense of isolation, there is no sense of disconnect, that each one of us is in the perfect place right here and right now to connect in love with everyone we meet, everyone in our circle, everyone that we hold in our heart. And how good it is to know this, how good it is to feel it, and how good it is to see it operating in this community right here and right now. And I just give thanks for this knowing. I'm so grateful to see it unfolding, and I'm so grateful for all who participate in it. And I release this word into the creative law, into that mind that always says yes, that never knows any lack or limitation. I let it go and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.